The Oklahoma Sooners and the LSU Tigers are still after Bowe Bentley, but that's only part of the quarterback recruiting situation.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Oklahoma, LSU, and many other programs are still trying to figure out their quarterback situation, but there may not be a more interesting one than what the Sooners got going on. Entanglement with LSU, going after Bowe Bentley, there's Jaden O'Neal, and more. To help me figure out everything, John Williams. Look, Locked On soon. You guys have so much quarterback stuff to talk about. I'm jealous because that's good for ratings. But Jaden O'Neal's committed, has been for a long time. You've got Bowe Bentley in the fold as somebody that they want, not in the fold, but somebody they really want. They would take to. You got Florida State, LSU, there's all these different major players coming together. So, John, give everybody your opinion. With Jaden obviously committed, where is Oklahoma quarterback recruiting today?
Yeah, so they want to take two quarterbacks in this class, and I know that that's a rare thing to see in especially the modern era of college football. But here's the situation. Jaden O'Neal committed to Seth Littrell when Seth Littrell was still the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. Now, obviously, things did not go well for Oklahoma's offense in any stretch of the imagination, whether it's play calling or injuries or offensive line play or quarterback. You can throw a number of things out there to discuss why Oklahoma's offense was poor last year. But when they made the changes at offensive coordinator, Jaden O'Neal stayed committed. He's a talented quarterback prospect. He's a little bit more of the passing type of quarterback prospect. He's not your typical dual threat quarterback that you're seeing a lot of college programs going after in this day and age, but he is every bit the passer that you want to have in a quarterback. Ben Arbuckle arrives in Norman, and I totally get where he's coming from. Every offensive coordinator is going to want to have their guy, quote unquote, their guy that they want to bring in as their quarterback. And so not long after Ben Arbuckle got to Oklahoma, they offered Bowe Bentley out of Texas. And this was kind of as Bowe Bentley is starting to rise and starting to make a little bit of a name for himself after a big time season last year. So Oklahoma is interested in taking both quarterbacks. The question then becomes what happens at quarterback if they do end up getting a commitment from Bowe Bentley. Does Jaden O'Neal stay committed? He's had flirtations with Florida State, a lot of flirtations with Florida State. He's visited Arizona. He's been around. He's visited Auburn. So he's got a lot of interest out there, and he should. He's a really, really talented quarterback. He moved to Oklahoma, though, to be closer to Norman. And that's the big, fascinating aspect in all of this is he's very committed to Oklahoma. And I believe Oklahoma is very committed to him. I think they also want to bring in Bowe Bentley. And that's where it creates a little bit of drama and confusion. There's been some miscommunications between the staff and the family and Jaden O'Neal at times during all of this, because they were under the impression that initially that he was going to be the only guy. After they've talked it out, they kind of know where Oklahoma's coming from, because John Mateer could go pro after this year. And that leaves you Michael Hawkins and Jet New as your top quarterbacks in the 2026 season. So they're going to want to look to have a deeper quarterback room than just that.
Yeah, that's not going to cut it at, even a G5 school, let alone the University of Oklahoma. So yeah, I don't think that's going to work. My question for you is timelines. It's always the key factor in recruiting every position, quarterback in particular. Bowe's out in LA. We were talking about that off air. He's at the Elite 11 finals. I don't think he'll make a decision during that time frame. Kids usually go home when they do that, but you never know. If they don't get something done with him before the end of June, would that surprise you?
Only because he's made it clear that he wants to be a part of the peer recruiting process. He wants to help whatever school that he commits to recruit. And the summer months, as you know, Brian, and as your listeners know, the summer months are critical for the official visit season, for these big recruiting events that are taking place across the country. And I don't know what LSU's schedule looks like for the summer, but I know that Oklahoma's got the Champion Barbecue coming up June 20th through the 22nd. And that's a big recruiting weekend for them. So I was initially of the mind that maybe he might be a part of that. I don't think it says one thing or another if he's not a part of that recruiting weekend because he came to Oklahoma 2 weeks ago for his official visit. But it would surprise me if this lingered on into the season because I do think that he wants to be a part of the recruiting process. Oklahoma will have another big recruiting weekend just before August where they, what is it? I can't remember what the exact name for that recruiting weekend is, but it's another big one that Oklahoma puts on inside the stadium. It's maybe Party at the Palace or Under the Stars or something. There's so many names, but I would imagine that before summertime, we get something. He's been very methodical in his whole recruitment. You don't get much out of him, out of his family at all. Not much on social media, not much to the media itself. And so they're going to be methodical about this. You know, it's down to Oklahoma. It's down to LSU. And I think at this point, it's a pick 'em. I feel maybe Oklahoma might have a slight lean just because he's a grown up, an Oklahoma fan. And that might have a little bit of sway. And they can point to John Mateer and what Ben Arbuckle's done with the quarterback like Bowe Bentley. So, but at the same time, it's hard to negate what LSU has to offer with that wide receiver room, what they do down in Baton Rouge with quarterbacks as well.
Yeah, it's a fascinating recruitment. And then you mentioned something else. I host Locked On Seminoles too in Florida State. They're after Jaden O'Neal. I'm curious to see because he's got his visit to Oklahoma coming up. He's been committed forever. Mm-hmm. How does that end up affecting him? Does he care? Like if Bowe Bentley stays in that class, like if he comes, like, does he care? The kid's not necessarily going to admit it publicly, but you'd rather be the only quarterback in a class. I think that's pretty safe to say. I would. So I'm curious what that really does for him. Auburn, Florida State, and other schools are trying to get him. Arizona, as you rightfully mentioned. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I would assume that he needs to make a decision quicker too, because those other schools, they need to know.
Yeah.
This is a process for everybody. To usually take one. I could see maybe Arizona letting it play out a little longer, but like Florida State and Auburn need to figure something out pretty quick, especially Florida State. Their quarterback room is kind of goofy right now. So I'm curious to see if it goes beyond this week for him, like if he doesn't announce, hey, either I'm shutting it down with Oklahoma after the visit, or B, I'm cutting time. Like there needs to be something from one of these guys. Maybe it's O'Neal first. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like O'Neal will make any kind of move unless he just is ready to move because Bowe Bentley is going to commit. Like I think he's staying committed to Oklahoma unless he and his people decide like, listen, you know what? It's cool. They got Bowe Bentley. That's the one that Ben Arbuckle, that's the guy he offered coming to Oklahoma. We're going to go pursue other options. And I don't think anybody would feel any sort of way about that. I think everybody would understand where Jaden O'Neal and his camp would be coming from. But I don't necessarily think that they want to move off of their commitment until everybody knows what Bowe Bentley is going to do. And he could stay committed to Oklahoma. He very well could be the other quarterback in this class, not the other quarterback, but another quarterback in this class, because that quarterback room isn't going to have a whole lot of experience. And, you know, you'll have Michael Hawkins as the front runner to start if and when John Mateer decides to leave. But beyond that, there's not really any guarantees for anybody on the roster. So I can understand why Jaden O'Neal might want to come be a part of what Ben Arbuckle is creating at quarterback for Oklahoma as well. Maybe a little bit more stable situation with the offensive coordinator situation. I'm not sure, but Mike Norvell, I mean, you could see what they were able to do with Jordan Travis down there with Florida State. And so that could be an intriguing option for him too. I just don't think anybody really knows at this point, you know, and I don't think anybody would feel negatively towards Jaden if he decided to decommit and go to Florida State or Auburn, or even if he decided to stay committed to Oklahoma. I think it wouldn't say one thing or another about the kid. I think everybody understands he's a good kid, good family. He's kind of done all the right things that you'd want a quarterback commit to do. He's been active on the recruiting trail. He's really tried to peer recruit well. He moved from California to Oklahoma to be closer to campus. So I think everybody in Sooner Nation is kind of rooting for him a little bit, and they want to still see a way for it to work out to where they could get both on campus and keep both for the long haul. Hard to say if that's even possible in this day and age in college football and in college recruiting. It's just the way of the world, but he's a talented kid, man. He's got the big arm. He's a very accurate passer. He can throw all the balls that you want a quarterback to be able to throw. And again, he's a good kid. He's a leader. The fascinating thing here is Kevin Sperry, who was one of Oklahoma's quarterback commits for 2025, ended up, decommitting, flipping to Florida State, maybe in some way to move away from Jaden O'Neal, who was on his way to Oklahoma, but could be that Florida State gets both those guys in their quarterback room, which would be fascinating too. So just so many balls in the air right now as far as quarterbacks concerned.
I absolutely agree. John, tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
Yeah, so you can follow Locked On Sooners on all your social media platforms. You can subscribe to Locked On Sooners wherever you get your podcasts. And on YouTube, you can also read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com.
Appreciate it, sir. You can find the Portal Podcast on Apple, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, and everywhere else. Thank you very much. We will see you again soon on the Portal Podcast.